Hello there. Welcome back to the Mindset Check podcast. My name is Misha McKittrick, and Merry Christmas. Today we're doing something just a little bit different. We're mixing it up, and we're doing some seasonal content. Trust me, it always is around mindset and shifting our mindset so that we can invite something better. We can create something better in our lives. So it is just that, and it's especially for Christmas. I hope through this podcast today that we will be able to help you take that holiday mindset check in a way that helps you invite the Christmas spirit into your heart, into your home, into your living, into everything that flows out of you during this season. Just a reminder, I have 2 gifts for you during this holiday season. One is a meditation and one is free coaching. You have just a couple of days left to sneak in some coaching if you wanted to drop in and sign up for a free hour with me. It has been an absolute pleasure to meet with you and to connect in a heart space with you and to walk through whatever it is that you have been searching for. Some have been wanting just to turn up the Christmas energy, right? Just to turn up, like it's like a dial, it's like a volume button, right? Or like a dial on your radio in your car, and you get to decide how much energy you turn up and what you put into Christmas. And so some people have just wanted to light that up, and some people have wanted to talk about things that are on their heart to help them to see things that maybe they weren't able to see in the moment and help them have breakthroughs in those spaces. So I've been having so much fun meeting with you, and you have a couple more days if you want to take advantage of that offer. I'll make sure that there is a link in the show notes. And Merry Christmas to you. Okay, today's episode, we actually are going to still read from my journal, which is so fun. But we're reading from my journal many, many years later than what we're normally reading from. This is going to be in 2015 when my 3 boys were 5, 10, and 13. So in the story, when I'm reading this journal, when we drop in, you'll see that Tice is 5 years old, Scotty is 10 years old, Mac is 13 years old, and I also want to give you just a little bit of a warning for little ears that might be listening, because we talk about things with Christmas that are strictly for elves and grown-ups. Let's jump in. November 21st, 2015. Belief. So about a week ago, we were driving, and Scotty said to me, "Mom, all my friends are saying the tooth fairy isn't real. Is she?" I would have leveled with him, with the exception that Tice, 5 years old, sitting in the back seat, was listening intently. So I just said, "What do you think?" And Scotty carried on with, "Well, one time I was at Grandma C's and I lost a tooth. I was sleeping in the living room on a cot. And when I woke up in the morning, there was money. And no offense to Grandma, but she can't be that quiet." In parentheses, my mom will get such a kick out of that. So fast forward to yesterday when Mac was sick home from school. I told him that story. He got a good laugh. Then we started talking about Santa. I told him a story about me being a little girl and being out with my family on a Christmas Eve. We were riding in the car on the way home, and I saw a red light in the sky. I thought, "Oh my gosh, is it ... And then just as quickly as I let my hopes soar, I thought, it's probably just a tower or something. Then when we got home, I was listening to the radio in the front room, and I remember getting right up close to it when between songs, they were saying that they had just seen the light from Rudolph's nose and that they must be waiting for all of us to go to bed. It momentarily restored my belief. I remember saying to myself, "Oh, it was Rudolph's light. It was real. Oh, Santa is real. And I really saw it." So as I told Mac that story, and that it was during my years of trying to figure it out, he says to me the sweetest thing. He said, "I just thought to myself, it doesn't really matter if it's real. What matters is that it's really nice, and we should be grateful for it. Oh man, I love that kid. That melted my heart in all the right ways. The best way to kick off the season. I love that story. Looking back through my journal and memories of things that my kids said when they were younger is so fulfilling to me. I hope it brought up for you some memory, something from your past, something that was adorable, or something that helped you gain more understanding because through their innocent eyes, they see it differently. When I look back and really kind of take this story apart and I watch the way that my brain was working when I was so young, trying to put things together, the way that Scotty's brain was trying to, justify, well, yeah, because grandma can't be that quiet. It's just the innocence of youth it's intense with joy and good feelings. And it's also intense with your realization of how far, we come as we grow. And I love Mac's perspective, 13 years old, just saying, you know what? It doesn't really matter if it's real. What matters is that it's really nice. And my aunt posted something on Facebook last week that I just loved. She said, as a grown-up, I've learned that all the, quote, Christmas magic I felt as a kid was really parents who loved me. And the realization of how things boil down and we call up those memories and how, my mom was always so good at creating Christmas magic, and she still is, right? And really all of it roots from kindness, from love. There's a quote from the Polar Express that says, seeing is believing, but sometimes the most real things in the world are things we can't see. And that's it, right? The things that we can only see maybe when we look back in time and kind of zoom out our focus. Sometimes we can see the things that we can't see in the moment. But I just love that the most real things in the world are most often things we can't see. There's a story about kindness at Christmas that Stephanie Meyer wrote called Hero at the Grocery Store, and I want to share it with you. Christmas stories happen in the most everyday places. I was part of one not long ago at the grocery store. I hope I never forget it. Suddenly everyone was quiet. Even my rowdy children paused, feeling the change in the atmosphere. Christmas stories happen in the most everyday places. I was part of one not long ago at the grocery store. I hope I never forget it, though the memory is bittersweet. I had been shopping for almost an hour by the time I got to the checkout lines. My 2 youngest sons were with me, the 4-year-old refusing to hold onto the cart, the 2-year-old trying to climb out of the basket and jump down to play with his brother. Both got progressively whinier and louder as I tried to keep them under control. So I was looking for the fastest checkout lane possible. I had 2 choices. In the first line were 3 customers, and they all had just a few purchases. In the second line was only one man, a young father with his own crying baby, but his cart was overflowing with groceries. I quickly looked over the 3-person line again. The woman in the front was very elderly, white-haired, and rail thin, and her hands were shaking as she tried to unsuccessfully unlatch her big purse. In the other line, the young father was throwing his food onto the conveyor belt with superhuman speed. I got in the line behind him. It was the right choice. I was able to start unloading my groceries before the elderly woman was even finished paying. My 4-year-old was pulling candy from the shelf, and my little one was trying to help by lobbing cans of soup at me. I felt I couldn't get out of the store fast enough. And then, over the sound of the store's cheery holiday music, I heard the checker in the other line talking loudly. Too loudly. I glanced over as my hands kept working. No, I'm sorry, the checker was almost shouting at the woman, who didn't seem to understand. That card won't work. You are past your limit. Do you have another way to pay? The tiny old woman blinked at the checker, with a confused expression. Not only were her hands shaking now, but her shoulders too. The teenage bagger rolled her eyes and sighed. As I caught a soup can just before it hit my face, I thought to myself, boy, did I choose the right line. Those three are going to be there forever. My mood was positively smug as my checker began scanning my food. But the smiling woman directly in line behind the elderly lady had a different reaction. Quietly, with no fanfare, she moved to the older woman's side and ran her own credit card through the reader. "Merry Christmas," she said softly, still smiling. And then everyone was quiet. Even my rowdy children paused, feeling the change in the atmosphere. It took a minute for the older woman to understand what had happened. The checker, her face thoughtful, hesitated with the receipt in her hand, not sure whom to give it to. The smiling woman took it and tucked it into the elderly woman's bag. I can't accept," the older woman began to protest with tears forming in her eyes. The smiling woman interrupted her. "I can afford to do it. What I can't afford is not to do it. Let me help you out," the suddenly respectful bagger insisted, taking the basket and also taking the old woman's arm, the way she might have helped her own grandmother. I watched the checker in my line pause before she pressed the total key to dab at the corner of her eyes with a tissue. Paying for my groceries and gathering my children, I made it out of the store before the smiling woman. I had made the right choice of lanes, it seemed, but as I walked out into the bright December sunshine, I was not thinking about my luck, but what I could not afford. I could not afford my current self-absorbed frame of mind. I could not afford to have my children learn lessons of compassion only from strangers. I could not afford to be so distant from the Spirit of Christ at any time of the year, especially during this great season of giving. I could not afford to let another stranger, another brother or sister, cross my path in need of helping without doing something about it. And that is why I hope I never forget the Christmas hero in the grocery store. The next time I have a chance to be that kind of a hero, I can't afford to miss it. Oh, I love that story so much. I love the way that a little bit of kindness changed everyone's vibration around it. Everyone suddenly fell into step with respect and love and kindness and wrapping our arms around each other and taking care of each other. W.C. Jones said, "The joy of brightening others' lives becomes for us the magic of the holidays." And as I think about Christmas and the spirit of Christmas and the times when we have, the opportunity to step up because we can see it happening right in front of our face. But then there's times where we don't know and we have to rely on those whisperings that we talk about. The whisperings that come as part of our intuition, as part of instruction for us, of things that there's no way that we can be aware of, but when we listen, we can be. And with that, I wanted to share with you this story from April Winget. The other night, my family gathered around the Christmas tree, and part of our tradition of Christmas that I wish we did every night, but it's also so busy during the Christmas season. But one of the things I love that we do is we gather around and we share scripture, we share stories, and we share a Christmas song. And then we try to always pray for a family who needs a prayer, and whoever's praying gets to choose. They get to choose, the family, and then they pray for each person individually and what we think they need. And so as we were gathered around the tree and just kind of sitting on the couch with low light, and we were going through all of this wonderful, beautiful process that brings the Christmas spirit so strong, my son, who is 17 years old, said, "Mom, actually, instead of your story, can I tell you this story? Because I'm afraid I'm going to forget details. And he told me this story that his teacher, April Winget, told him. And I, after I heard this story, reached out to her and just said, will you share that on my podcast for Christmas? So here's her touching and beautiful Christmas story that has everything to do with tapping in and listening to the whisperings.
So it was years ago,
Okay.
Young mom. And I think at the time I just had 3 small kids, late 20s, very much in that mindset of I've got to get things done. Mm-hmm. Middle of Christmas, snowy, cold night. As a young mom, you know you have a time frame.
Oh, yeah.
You got to get so much done, like a list of 30 things in an hour. And as I was looking at my list, the first thing I wanted to do was return a few items. Walmart was right up the hill. I thought I'll hit that first. Like I said, it was freezing. Mm-hmm. Dark, cold. It was up north in the Salt Lake area. I had bundled up, big coat, the scarf, the hat, the whole caboodle. I got into Walmart and I was already feeling a little bit rushed, mm-hmm. right? Because I wanted to make sure I could get everything done that I had on that list. And as I walked into Walmart, you know how those doors open. Mm-hmm. They kind of make that swishing noise, and they would swish open and then swish back. And immediately I walk in and I see I'm right there by the customer service. And there is a line of people already. And so I'm thinking, do I stay? Do I go? I'm in a hurry. And made the decision to stay, hop in line with, this energy of move, people move. I got to go. I've got places to be. And as I'm walking in line, I notice in front of me, I don't recall anybody else, but a particular man. I can still see him. Probably barely 5'2", if that, mustache, dark complexion, and this red ball cap. We didn't make eye contact, but I just noticed him. I got in line. I stood there. I felt like it was just taking forever, feeling a little impatient. And as I'm standing there, those doors are swishing open and back and forth. And as I'm looking, I see an old, dear friend, college roommate from years ago who I hadn't seen since college. And she walks in, we connect, we see each other, we small talk. She's there to return a few things, talked about life and her kids and vice versa. Then she gets in line behind, I think there were maybe 3 or 4 people behind me. And then she jumps in line, hug each other, wish each other a Merry Christmas. And that was it. Mm-hmm. As I'm getting closer to the checkout, the customer service to return my items, I think there was just that little man in front of me. And those doors, I don't know if I'm giving it justice, the swishing sound, but those doors opened and it was as if time froze. Mm. And I'm looking ahead and it was like slow motion to a certain degree. This family walks in and it was so very apparent and quickly evident that life had not been kind. They walk in and Dad's kind of leading the pack and he's big. I'm thinking like 6'4", 6'5", like a big burly man, mustache, beard, long hair. He had some kind of mechanical suit on, greasy hands, and he walked in and Mom was following quickly behind him, and it was like a mother and her little ducklings, right? 3 little kids behind her, boys maybe 7, 8, 9, 10, the 2 older boys, and then a little girl maybe around 5 or 6. And I was immediately just emotional. And I had gone from thinking about these returns, this list, the things I have to get done, to just feeling like despair almost and overwhelmed for what is this family's life like? There were no coats. Kids' clothes were obviously small. They looked a little dirty, unkept. And as Mom was getting in, she puts a little one, maybe 2 years old, in the front of the cart. And as they're rolling past customer service, you're glancing, but you don't want to stare. And I look at the little one and the whole left side of his face was severely deformed, right? From the ear to just the skin to the formation of the mouth on that side. And it just took my breath away. I was overwhelmed. And then I started to think, what happened? What's his story? What's happened in that situation? It was just very painful. They moseyed on by and went off to do their thing. And I finally got to the point, I returned my items and kind of choking back on tears and the emotion of that situation. And at the same time thinking, my list didn't seem so important anymore. And as I'm getting ready to walk out those doors, they swished open, and it was a very strong impression. April, stop. Go find that family. And I remember thinking, find that family and do what? Like, I don't know them. The dad is huge. I'm a little intimidated by him. And I kept thinking, what would I do? And I don't want to offend them or this mom. And I try to walk out that door again, and it was so strong. Again, a thought and impression came to me, and I felt like if I could liken it to something, it was like being a young teenage girl and my mom saying, stop. It was like that strong of an impression. And I remember again, the thought came to me, stop, April, go find that family and help them. And I didn't know what that looked like. I didn't know what that meant, but the impression was that strong that I thought, okay, I'm going to trust in God and I'm going to find them. And I remember feeling really uneasy walking through Walmart thinking, oh, well, maybe they've left. Maybe I won't have to worry about it. Maybe they're gone. And as I moseyed over to the toys, of course, where do you think I would find them would be over by the toys. And I just would kind of take my breath as I would hit an aisle, look down the aisle. Okay, they're not there, right? And then finally I got to the aisle where there's like toys and trucks and, big things that they can play with. And those kids were scampering up and down the aisle. Mom was kind of looking at things and I thought, well, now what? Mm-hmm. There they are. And another very strong impression and thought came to my mind. April, ask the mom if you can buy each one of those kids a gift. And that caused me to pause again. I'm a young mom. I have a young family. My situation was not anything near to what theirs was, but I was a little concerned with money and how that would look like and if I'd have enough. And I followed that impression. I walked up to the mom. I tried to kind of have small talk, kind of get a feel for the situation. And I just remember getting this burst of energy and confidence in saying, would it be possible if I could buy each one of your kids a toy? Well, of course, those little kids and their ears just perked up because they heard that and they were, please, 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 please. And the mom didn't say a word. She just nodded her head. And tears started to form in her eyes, as well as my eyes. And again, that thought of leaving my house, me, my kids, getting things done, getting ready for Christmas, none of that was bad. But it certainly wasn't as important as what was going to take place. The kids pick out toys. They put them in the cart. We start rolling back to the checkout, and there's joy, right? There's joy that we feel when we give to each other, especially when it's unexpected. And I look at her and we're talking, and then I glance forward, and all of a sudden there's my old college roommate, Rebecca. And I'm looking at her, and she's looking at me, and not a word has been said about this family. Nor did she know that I was prompted and inspired to go find them. And she grabbed me. She hugged me, she wished me a Merry Christmas, and then she grabbed my hand and put money in my hand. And I'm looking at her, and she looks at me. Tears are in her eyes. Tears are in my eyes. And we don't say anything else, right? It was very apparent as the night progressed that we were certainly not there on our errand or for the reasons that we thought we were supposed to be there. We start walking again. We're getting closer to the checkout. And I kid you not, lo and behold, The only man that I noticed in that checkout, red ball cap, mustache, standing in front of me, doesn't say a word to me, doesn't say one word to me, just reaches out, grabs my hand, and puts a wad of money in my hand. He looks at me, I look at him, and he's on his way. I am so overcome with emotion, knowing that really that whole purpose of that night really had little to even do with those gifts that we were buying for those kids, but more importantly, the message that God wanted that woman and that little family to know that night. And as we approached the checkout and we were checking things out, and I think I never really saw the dad again. I think he was maybe getting stuff for mechanical stuff or whatever. And as we got to the checkout, toys were purchased, they were put in the cart, and here I am with all this leftover money. And Pression comes to me in April, give her the money so she can buy food for her family. And we stood there, and it became, we went through the whole thing. We're checking out, and we're at the end of the aisle, standing by those doors, and it became a holy experience, if I can say that, in the sense where it was very evident again to me that that whole night, that whole experience was about God, about love, about how much we need each other, and the good we can do as we give gifts of generosity and love, the good we can do when we're still and allow those impressions to come to our heart and our mind, and the courage to reach out and love. And I remember grabbing her, and I can't give you word for word what I said, but that too was directed. And I grabbed her and I hugged her so tight, and it was as if she was my own sister, right? The love that I felt for her, I felt it like it was reciprocated. And I just looked at her and I said, these gifts, this money, it's not from me. It's from God. And He loves you, and He knows you, and He sees you, and He knows exactly what you and your family are going through, and He's real. And we just stood there and cried. And it was apparent to her, I believe too, that love that enveloped us in that busy, chaotic Walmart, again, it was as if time stood still. And what a gift to me. Yeah. That for some reason that night, God picked me, another man, and an old college roommate to be on His errand. And it was just, 22 years ago, I think, 23 years ago. And I don't remember what I returned that night. I don't remember what I gave my kids for Christmas, but I will never forget that moment in time where God was teaching me a very valuable lesson, how real that He is, how important we are to Him, and how much He needs us to love each other, really love each other, and not be so worried with possessions and things, but when we really extend ourselves and love each other the ways that He would want us to, like we've talked about, generosity, kindness, forgiveness, whatever it is, the joy that we get in return far surpasses any gift, right? Yeah. And so it was kind of my Christmas miracle in a way that it moved me to be a better person and more thoughtful, and just those moments teach us how to love without limits. As I've thought about this over the years, I'm sure that mom doesn't remember what was purchased for those kids, but it was an act of love, sincere love and generosity that was just a Christmas miracle, not just on her behalf, but for everybody that was able to play a part of that. And like you said, it's chaotic. It's Walmart. Nobody else knows what's going on, but those small individuals, right? Me, my college roommate, a man I never saw again, and a family in need.
And the ripple effect.
Right.
Who knows?
Who
knows what came of it. Thank you so much for sharing that story.
Absolutely.
It's so amazing.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. I love that story from April. There's a quote from the Paper Bag Christmas that says, "Christmas magic is silent. You don't hear it. you feel it, you know it, you remember it. And I love that quote in connection with her story, because that's something that happened that's such a core memory for her. Like, she will never forget it. And that's Christmas magic. Christmas magic is being able to look back and see your own Christmas memories and what that ignites in your heart because of how we felt it. You know, the quote or the concept that talks about how people forget the things that you say, they forget things that you do, but they never forget how you make them feel. Because when we feel something, it is so much deeper on a level of our memory. And as I was thinking about these different memories and these different stories that we've gone over, I started to think about the science of Christmas, the science of our heart actually growing. And I wanted to drop in and talk with you a little bit about this because this is something I feel extremely passionate about. This is something from Applied Consciousness International. It's a quote. It says, "The sciences of psychology and medicine are in midst of a major paradigm shift as research findings have uncovered that the heart is a sensory organ that can learn, hold memory, and make independent, functional decisions. Even more surprising is the fact that the heart displays qualities of neuroplasticity, and it can reorganize itself by growing new neural connections, just as the brain can do." They talk about how the heart has an electromagnetic field that can be detected from across the room, and how this field and being in this vibration unlocks the potential of living in the frequency of love. And so now I want to kind of look back on the stories that we shared and how the first story that I shared with you from my journal, how it unlocked my heart to be interacting with my children and their thoughts, right? The way that they're processing life. And then the second story of how everyone's hearts that were surrounding this elderly woman and this smiling woman that helped the elderly woman at the grocery store, how all of their hearts, once they ignited that feeling, right? That heart feeling, it was like an electromagnetic field where they were all interacting with each other, and their fields, right, from their heart were interacting. And then the story from April and how amazing it was to have each person be receiving these whisperings and how each heart was ignited into a state where they were living in this heart center, in flow. And then they were letting their heart lead, right? As they continued throughout their evening, their Christmas season, as they have those deep-seated reminders and feelings as they ponder and look back on those stories. And when at Christmas we focus on others, that's going to, without any doubt, open and ignite our heart and drop us into these heart feelings, creating all of this energy, right? That creates and wakes up our heart, and it creates a different vibration. Judy Garland at Christmas time sings this song, "Have Yourself a Merry Little Christmas." And it says, "Let your heart be light. From now on, your troubles will be out of sight." And it's so interesting to me, the connection of when we are taking action at Christmas to love. And don't fall into like a cycle of beating yourself up of what you're not doing right now. Fall into the cycle and look at what you are doing. Because there's so many things, so many different ways that we ignite those feelings, right? Maybe we're giving a thoughtful gift to someone. Maybe we're planning a family dinner. Maybe we are reaching out to someone who is not doing well during Christmas, right? We just had some people that we know very well lose their house to a house fire and everything. The only thing they got out were their cars. And when we ignite our heart to respond to that, I feel like the electromagnetic field that goes out from our own heart when we're interacting closely with others, it also ignites their heart. And that's why there's so much of a different feeling at Christmas, right? Because we're checking into our heart. We're checking into the things that are action items that ignite love. Dale Evan Rogers said, "Christmas, my child, is love in action. Every time we love, every time we give, it's Christmas." And I love one of my very, very favorite songs of Christmas says the lines, "What shall we give to the babe in the manger? What shall we offer the child in the stall?" And I love thinking about how all of these incredible actions and igniting our heart, and then just by igniting our own heart, we ignite the hearts of the people around us, okay? Because we're operating in an energy. And when we do that, we're giving a gift. We're offering something to the child in the stall simply by our actions. And it's not that we have to do anything different than what we're doing. It's simply that we make a choice that in the things that we are doing, that we're having ourselves a merry little Christmas, that we're letting our heart be light. And that by helping others, we ignite our own heart and we ignite the hearts around us. I love thinking about the science of Christmas. There is so much light inside of these concepts, inside of, Christmas miracles happening in everyday places, in the doing of what we're already doing. It is so incredibly beautiful and poignant to me that the chucker, who was starting to get so impatient with the old woman, how a simple act of kindness melted a wall around her heart. And the bagger, right? And everyone else who felt impatient and they were only thinking about themselves. And when we focus on our problems, we can bring more of our problems. It is important to focus on, the things that we're struggling with so we can process them or handle them. But sometimes we get stuck there. Sometimes we need to remember that it's our choice to let our heart be light. That from now on, our troubles will be out of sight. And those are because of our own actions. And we can move out of it, raise our vibration, check into the Christmas spirit, and then those problems either melt away or we have more capacity to handle them, to deal with them. And so I just hope that some of those thoughts are coming together to help you see that as we go through the everyday days of Christmas, that we have the power to give gifts to the babe in the manger, that we can bring offerings to the child in the stall. And I share that with you in hopes that it ignites an incredible feeling of Christmas in your heart and in your lives as you move forward through this season. Merry Christmas. Thank you for listening. Thank you for dropping into the Christmas spirit with me today. If you think that this podcast will bring warmth into someone else's Christmas season, then share it with them. I would love that, and you would be helping and supporting this podcast. Just wanted to say a huge thank you for all of your love, for all of your support, for reaching out and sharing our lives together. I'm looking forward to the new year and for things that are coming up. Next week, we'll be back with our regularly scheduled podcast. And in January, we have so many fun things coming up. I have more meditations to offer you. I've been thinking about doing a masterclass on scarcity and abundance, right? Moving out of scarcity and moving into abundance. If you're interested in that, DM me. If I get enough interest, I'm going to totally just do it. And then we'll also be dropping into starting a new cohort for the Power Up coaching towards the end of January. So be watching for that. Until next time, my friend, Merry Christmas.